All right, welcome to our Safe Routes to School Grant Invoicing and Reporting webinar. This webinar has been made possible by Federal Transportation Alternatives Program funds administered by the Michigan DOT in collaboration with the Michigan Fitness Foundation. MFF, or the Michigan Fitness Foundation, is a nonprofit organization located in Lansing, or now we're in Okemos, and has been involved with Michigan's Safe Routes to School program since its inception in 2003 with the Safe Routes to School pilot. The Michigan Fitness Foundation administers the Safe Routes to School program on behalf of MDOT by providing training and technical assistance to all schools and communities participating in Safe Routes to School. So who is this training for? This training is for recipients of Safe Routes to School grant funds in Michigan. So more specifically, it's intended for those people who will be responsible for implementing and administering the program in your school or school district. Depending on the community, this could be one person or several people. Take a moment to consider the people on your Safe Routes to School team. Let's identify who should view this training. The building principal, the Safe Routes to School coordinator, if you have one, or local champion, the person in your business office who is responsible for accounting and purchasing, or the person or people in your grants office, if you have one, are all people who should take the time to view this webinar. And if anyone listed here is not able to make this webinar, I will be sending a recording of the webinar to all folks who registered for this training session. So that will be sent out shortly after we wrap up. And today this training will cover a few things, how a fiduciary organization is defined and what those responsibilities are, creating your internal system for managing expenditures and reporting, the invoicing process, the information you need to submit an invoice and where to find it, as well as the forms to submit and how to complete them, using documentation to demonstrate eligibility of program expenditures, fiduciary do's and don'ts, and when and how to submit invoices. And I will let Max take it away.
Thank you, Aaron. So, turning to fiduciary responsibilities, the fiduciary is the organization that handles the money. It is the entity that MFF contracts with to administer the Safe Routes to School federal award. Because these funds are granted on a reimbursement basis for actual costs, this means that someone must spend their money first and then request to get paid back. As such, the fiduciary pays for all program staff and expenses. The fiduciary is also the entity that is held responsible for managing and spending the funds in accord with all laws, regulations, and program guidelines. Fiduciary responsibilities include pay upfront costs for personnel and non-personnel expenses, like the volunteer incentives, student incentives, materials, supplies, etc. Work with the Safe Routes to School coordinator or a local champion to ensure that the materials are ordered in a timely fashion. Ensure that the money is spent in compliance with regulations and that they submit the invoices and the progress reports. Continuing, if you need to request budget line item changes, you would do that, or to request an extension for the contract, you'd do that by email. Reporting document forms are located at saferoutesmichigan.org/award recipient reporting materials, or you can find them in the funding tab under award recipient reporting materials. You want to maintain the original receipts and supporting documentation for all your personnel costs and non-personnel costs. And please recognize that reimbursement could take up to 90 days from MFF's receipt of a complete reporting and invoice packet. And we'll go into that a little further as we get into the presentation. So invoices and progress reports can be submitted on a monthly or quarterly basis. Obviously, if you submit them monthly, you get reimbursed sooner. Likewise, if you have any questions about how to spend and how to implement, you'll want to ask those sooner in the program rather than later. Um, However, whether you choose in monthly or quarterly, invoices and progress reports must be submitted at regular intervals. And so you would choose the schedule that works best with your district or your school's system. The schedule is going to be located in the FY26 Safe Routes to School Procedures and Operations Manual. That will be coming out as we start fiscal year 26 on October 1st. Right now, we just have the fiscal year 25 Procedures and Operations Manual on the website. However, it will be pretty similar. So you want to use backwards planning to determine your internal deadlines for when you need to collect the documents, scan the receipts, and complete the reports, review them for accuracy and completeness, and make sure that you're prepared to meet external deadlines as well as your own internal deadlines. Make sure everybody on the team knows who's responsible for doing what and communicate ahead of time so that people are on the same page and know when things have to be completed. Um, Make a plan for who's going to field and resolve any questions that MFF may have after we've reviewed your invoice and your accompanying documentation. So some things to note. You do need to wait for the contract to be signed and executed between your organization and Michigan Fitness Foundation. Again, this is a reimbursement grant for the items, personnel and services that are in your approved budget summary. But even though the budget has been approved, you can't start spending until the contract is signed. Um, in preparation of that, we'll reach out to you if we haven't already to collect your audit certification form, vendor info form, and those are necessary for us to draft the contract and then send it out. We'll also send you a review of your award summary of what was being funded. This was the result of your mini grant application. And so when you get that, you should review that and make sure that that's all correct. We'll also be receiving your progress report, which will cover the specifics of your program. We cannot fund anything that is not in the award summary of the contract. So it's very important that you follow your plan with fidelity. Or if you need to change your plan, that you communicate with us ahead of time. Now that you've started to implement your program, you have incurred some expenses. Recall that as a reimbursement grant, the fiduciary is required to spend their funds and seek reimbursement from the Safe Routes to School award funds. Before you start working on the invoicing forms, let's take a look to find all the information you will need to include on the forms. For our discussion here, the words contract and agreement are interchangeable. They're the same thing. And sometimes we say contract, sometimes we say agreement, just so we're not repeating ourselves all the time. So the Safe Routes to School contract has some information that you need to be aware of, and other information to include on your reimbursement form. So, can you all see my cursor? Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs up. Okay, here's the cursor. So this right here is basically a box with some basic information. Notice on the top that it says subrecipient agreement. This means that we consider the fiduciary entity to be a subrecipient of the award as opposed to a contractor. What this means is that the fiduciary is responsible for knowing, understanding, and complying with all the regulatory requirements established by the federal awarding agency, in this case, Federal Highways Administration. The state agency that the funds flow through, in this case, the Michigan Department of Transportation. Universal grant guidelines that apply to all federal awards, and then the specific terms of the prime contract between MFF and MDOT, and that's included in your subrecipient agreement as Appendix A. So the box here at the top of page 1 contains some key pieces of information that you need to include on your invoice. The prime agreement number right here is the number of the specific contract between MDOT and MFF under which this subcontract falls. When we take a closer look at the invoice forms, I will point out where you should enter this information. Just below that is the authorization number. That was really more relevant in past contracts when we would get a different authorization number for each year. In this case, our authorization number won't change. It will be in the contract box though. The bottom of page 1, right here, or maybe on the top of page 2, depending on how long this paragraph is, will be the effective date. And that is the date upon which the last of the signatures was collected. And it's also the first date that you can start to incur expenses by either spending funds, placing an order for supplies and materials, or initiating a contract for services for your program, or paying someone on staff for your program. This section also indicates that the contract expires on September 30th, 2026. Continuing. So the prime agreement number, where is that? Right there. And there's authorization number. Where is it? Actually, we took it off here because we don't use authorizations anymore. The job number right here. This is basically an internal record keeping code assigned by MDOT. In this case, the NI stands for non-infrastructure. Let's see. Next page. You can find the award summary at the end of the contract in the last attachment, which is E for the school and community awards. Your budget has two broad categories or budget lines. One for personnel expenses down here, and one for non-personnel expenses up here. Make note of the total for each category. Should be here and here. And then the total award, which is down here. Also be sure to read any special requirements attached to this. So we require that all programs submit their regular progress reports that reflect the activities, as well as the observations and reflections of the project coordinator for the most recent period of time. Program coordinators should choose the same schedule as they do for invoices so that the progress reports and the invoices cover the same period of time and they can be turned in together. However, if there's a period of time, even if you don't have an invoice to submit, we still would like to get a progress report if you've had any program activities. Our program coordinator, Erin Quinlan Pascas, is the contact for any questions and assistance related to the progress reports. All right. Okay, now you're ready to complete the invoice packet. Um, so start by downloading a copy of the Safe Routes to School invoice template, which is an Excel spreadsheet file or workbook file. You get that from our website, saferoutesmichigan.org, under funding and then under award recipient reporting materials. Save the file to the computer and give it a name that reflects your program location, like the name of your school or your community. Note if you're a fiduciary for different programs operating in more than one community, you'll need to submit a separate invoice or report for each package. Submit an invoice or report package for each program. Please contact your Safe Routes School coordinator if you're unsure. So you'll start the MS Excel program on your computer and then open the file. You should see a yellow bar just below the green barrier that prompts you to click the button to enable editing. It'll be somewhere in the top there. And you should go ahead and click that. And once you do enable the content, then you should be able to type into the file and save your work. So this is the summary tab right here, and that's a good place to start filling out your workbook. So near the top of the form, you'll see some yellow boxes, and those are fields that you need to complete. Here you'll enter the name of the fiduciary. If that's not if it's not the school, it's probably the school district name or a nonprofit name. Then up here you would put the name of the actual school buildings that are involved in the award. Um, Prime number and job number will come off of the contract, as we saw a few slides back. And again, authorization, you're not going to have an authorization number on these awards. And once you're done entering these fields, then you should save the file. And you'll notice that these yellow boxes will turn white, and then that information will appear on these subsequent tabs. Okay, so next you'll enter information for the first invoice. It's called billing one. Um, and you'll use two or three tabs depending on whether you have personnel and or non-personnel expenses. So start by clicking on the billing one tab. You should see the fiduciary name and school name, contract number, job number. This will all populate over from this summary tab that we just filled out. For the billing period, the start date is going to be the date of your first expenditure in this report, which if it's personnel, it would be the first day that they had working for the program. If it's non-personnel, it'd be the date that something was purchased or something was ordered. So whichever of those dates is the first date, that will be the first date here in the billing period. Also recall that this date needs to be after the date that the contract was signed. And then the end date will be the end date of the month that you're in. Again, please be sure that the start date does not precede the effective date on your contract. We ask that whether you choose to submit monthly or quarterly, that you submit by the 10th of the month for the preceding reporting period. A best practice would be to have your reporting period start and end points correspond to the start and end of the month, which would give you 10 days to prepare and submit the invoice and the report. But you can find something that works in coordination with your business office. The field cumulative percentage of awards right there. That's your best estimate of how much of your total planned activities have been completed to that point thus far. This number should match what you say in the progress report, which also asks you to give your estimation of percent complete. Next, you'll want to take your approved budget amounts from your contract, the personnel subtotal and the non-personnel subtotal, and you'll enter that information there. You'll want to enter contact information here for the organization and the person that completes the form so that we know who to reach out to should we have any questions. Um, that's very important in case we need to talk to somebody. And note that there's a statement below that says you need to obtain any supporting documents. Oops. Um, and that if we need to take a look at them, or MDOT needs to take a look at them for purposes of an audit, that can happen. Um, so then you'll put an X in the box when you're done with all your expenses, and then click the mouse. So the next tab is the P tab. That's for personnel expenses. So you use the P1 tab for billing one, the P2 tab for billing two, etc. If you don't have any personnel expenses for that current period, you can just leave this form blank. After you determine how many employees you have expenses for, you would enter that number right here and then click the update button. So that if you have 4 employees, put a 4 there, hit update, and then it gives you 4 sections. It adds 3 more below for you to enter the time, probably in either 1 or 2 week periods for each person that works under the program. You put their name, their title, and not in the first invoice you put NA here, but on subsequent invoices you would put the date that they were most recently paid through. We use that date to check and make sure that people aren't accidentally paid twice or charged for the same hours on multiple billings. So you'll want to enter the name, the dates, the number of hours, the hourly rates. If you're approved to pay fringe benefits, put that rate in there too, and then it automatically gets calculated. If you have any non-personnel expenses, those go on the NP tab. Again, you just complete this with the item that was purchased, where it was purchased from, what's the corresponding line item from your award summary. Let me go back to an award summary real quick. Here's an award summary. So this one, ponchos, refreshments, printing costs. So if we are back here on personnel, you would put your printing costs here, and that would be, Kinko's or Easy Print or wherever, and then the amount there. You should enter data for each item in a separate row. In other words, even if you have one purchase that covers multiple items, go ahead and list each item out separately here so that we can track them against the award summary. Even if they're purchased from the same vendor at the same time, you'll still want to split them out. For example, if you paid for printing posters and printing T-shirts, you should put the posters and the T-shirts on their own lines. Related costs of the item should be aggregated. For example, printed T-shirts may have a setup or a design fee, printing costs, the cost of the shirts, maybe shipping and handling, postage, something like that. You should enter that all as one total for the item, if that's how it was budgeted in your award summary. And then right here, for the budget line item code. It could be 1A, 1B, 1C, whatever that is on your award summary. The total amount is going to be calculated at the bottom of the sheet. It adds up all of these different rows that something is entered for. And then that also appears in the billing one tab under the expended this period column in the non-personnel expenses row, and on the summary tab in the non-personnel column in the building one row. In other words, by filling out these tabs in here on each of these sheets, the information gets aggregated back to the billing tab and back to the summary tab. So you're going to want to continue adding the data for each current expense to report. And when you're done, type an X in the box here that says you're done entering expenses. If your budget was approved for any
Next.
mileage and you have any to report, it goes on the travel summary form. I believe you want to use the current state rates. I think it's actually up to 70 cents a mile now. And that would be available on Department of Management, Technology and Budget's website, DTMB. So then you're going to want to attach receipts in the order listed for all the known personal and non-personnel items. Um, because you can only get reimbursement for eligible expenses, you need to document what the expenses are and demonstrate their eligibility. This means that you must retain records of all program expenses and until a final audit of Safe Routes to School funds has been completed. And you must submit supporting documentation of current period expenses for your non-personnel expenses with your invoice and progress report. For personnel expenses, timesheets or other documents are acceptable, provided they identify the name and title and position of the person, the dates and number of hours worked. Again, for those personnel supporting documents, you don't need to send those in, but you need to keep them and have them on file and available. Please organize them in the order that you put them on the sheet, on the personnel expenses sheet or the non-personnel expenses sheet. Non-personnel receipts should be itemized, and that should identify the vendor, the date, the specific items purchased, the price per item, and the total paid. Because this is a reimbursement grant, the receipts need to indicate that the fiduciary has paid and not just ordered the items. So in other words, if you make a purchase order and then it just says net 30, that's basically just the order form. We need actually the form with the date indicating when it was paid. As a reminder, programs should follow the procurement procedures of your organization. You should scan your receipts and save them as a PDF file. Give the file a name that identifies your program and the invoice number or month. And that way it's easier to match it up. Please organize your receipts in the order that you report the expenses on the tab. Here is a few receipts here. It has to indicate that it was paid. If it's not, oops, sorry, there's the paid stamp. If it's not specified, then you need to like add some notes to the receipt to say what each of those things are. Um, Here's another thing where it's okay to add a note to provide more context for some of these purchases. Um, if you have any questions about that, please reach out to me or Adam Jenks or Aaron or Colleen for that matter. Let's talk a little bit about the invoicing process. So you're going to want to review your work. Once you finish entering all the data for the current period, please review the worksheets to look for any missing information or data entry errors. Verify that the dates of all the expenses fall within the reporting date range. Make sure that you mention in the progress report how and when you used or plan to use the non-personnel items included on the invoice. Check to verify, as applicable, that you use the correct rate of pay for personnel and the correct mileage rate for any travel if you did have that in your grant. Next, you're going to submit your invoice. You create an email addressed to Adam Jenks at ajenks@michiganfitness.org. Progress reports would go to Aaron Pascus, EPASKUS @michiganfitness.org. You can find my contact information on the billing tabs, the invoice workbook, in the Safe Routes to School Procedures and Operations Manual on our website, saferoutesmichigan.org. You're going to want, in this email, you're going to want to attach the Excel spreadsheet workbook with your current invoice, a PDF of any supporting documents of your non-personal expenditures, the current progress report, and any participation summaries. So include those all as attachments in your submission. And I'm going to turn it over to Aaron to talk more about progress reports.
Sure. Thanks, Max. Before I get started, we actually have a question in the chat about invoicing. So, Matthew asks, if we budget non-personnel expenditures and some things come in higher or lower than expected on the budget, what do we need to do? Is there allowable variance?
That's a good question. Um, you can have some variance of up to 15% from what was originally programmed without requiring a budget amendment or contract amendment to revise the budget. Um, I recognize, or we recognize that, but when you made the budgets, when applying for these funds, between then and now, there's been a few things happen that have increased some prices. Um, and, prices may still be going up further. So one thing I would say is maybe try and purchase earlier than later. Another thing is some things that you originally planned to buy may no longer be affordable, and you may have to come up with a substitute, or you may have to buy less. Um, I would stick to try and stick to the money that you have in your budget rather than the planned number of items in there because you don't want to approach it like, well, we said we were going to get 10 and we're going to get 10 no matter what they cost. You're still going to be held to your original budget. And so if you need to, revise the parameters of that purchase, you would be free to do so. And I would encourage you to reach out and talk to grant coordinator here, um, just to make sure that makes sense and that you're still able to implement that program with fidelity.
Awesome. Sweet. Matthew says, thank you. Very helpful answer. Awesome. Very glad that helped, Matthew. All right, cool. Well, now I will talk a bit about progress reports. And as a reminder, we'll also address progress reports on our next webinar coming up in October. But we'll just go briefly through them now. So you'll be submitting these with every invoice package. And if you do pass an invoicing period, whether that's quarterly or monthly, without having spent anything, please do still send in a progress report, like you would if you did have spending that you needed an invoice for. Just because we want to be able to see your progress and offer any help if you are feeling stuck. So your activities will be pre-listed under the activities column. I'll send these out to you and have you look them over and see if they match what you had in your application. And then we'll have you write a few sentences about the progress made at the time that you submit the invoice package in the description column on the second column. And then there will be, we'd also like to see documentation, so please provide copies of documents that support your work, such as photos, sign-in sheets, etc. Anything else that could show us what you guys have done. And this is just an example of a filled out version of the progress report. So you can see they have in their activity that they have a walking school bus with 5 routes overseen by program coordinators. So it is specific as to, what the activity will be. And then you can see the description is a paragraph that includes where the activity took place, how long the routes were, when they took place, and then it also included some challenges that they're experiencing with their program, as well as how they're working to fix those. So that would be the ideal amount of information that we could see about your programming. And then the documentation they just described here, so you don't have to attach the documentation in this document as a link. You can send it as a separate document in the email, but that is just a place for you to provide a description of those documents. And I'll pass it back on to Max to finish us out.
Thanks. These are just some basic do's and don'ts for fiduciary organizations. Do contact me or Safe Routes to School Grant Coordinator if you have questions. Do make your purchases in a timely manner so that you can fully implement your Safe Routes to School action plan. Remember, when you do make these purchases, they are items to use in your program, so you don't want to wait until the end of the year and then purchase everything because then you don't have time to use it. You want to purchase it at the start of the year. Do communicate with your local Safe Routes to School team to make sure that you all understand the expectations and requirements for spending grant funds. Try and be organized. Keep the original receipts and send in digital copies as PDF. Submit regular invoices according to your monthly or quarterly schedule. Again, we recommend monthly, but some organizations find that that is too much paperwork and want to submit it less regularly. Do use the funds only to support the Safe Routes to School program activities. Again, those are activities that you applied for in your mini grant program. It's the activities in your progress report, and it's the personnel and non-personnel items in your approved budget. Um, Moving on. Don't spend the funds until after the contract is fully executed, meaning signed by your organization and by MFF. Please don't upload your files to a Google Drive or Dropbox or some other site and send a link instead of emailing the files. That usually creates some circle or some security issues. Likewise, please don't try and use a Google Forms or a Google Sheets doc instead of Excel because the workbook contains macros or programs that won't work in Google. Don't wait until the end of the school year to submit an invoice, and you'll want to submit them early and often. It's a good way for uh, us to see how the program's going and for you to get feedback on how it's going. It's a good opportunity to engage with Safe Routes to School Grant Coordinator and get more assistance. Don't purchase items on the list of ineligible encouragement items. See the procedures and operations manual for that list. I know it seems obvious, but um, sometimes people can if they're straying from their approved budget, can think, well, would this be good for the program, or would this be good for kids, or would they like that? And unfortunately, that's not necessarily the measure of whether or not something is eligible. So try not to go off script. And if you think you might want to, please talk to a grant coordinator first so we can talk about any sort of planned purchases. Again, same thing. Don't assume that it's allowable. It may be allowable, it may not, but it's best to find out beforehand. Don't pay for things that were previously charged to another funding source. Let's say, you had a physical education grant that paid for some things, and that grant is over, and you need something similar that looks like Safe Routes to School could pay for it. Well, just because something is similar, it doesn't mean that you can do that. So, again, these funds are only for this program. Um, and don't proceed, to complete an invoice and just send it in if you're not sure about something. I'd say go back and watch this recording again, or refer to the Procedures and Operations Manual, or reach out to one of the grant coordinators here and get some assistance for your question before you complete all the forms. So just to wrap things up, a couple reminders. Plan to submit an invoice on a schedule with internal deadlines, and let the local program staff, the building principals, and the business office know what that is so that everyone's on the same page. Um, Remember that the first invoice progress report is going to be due the 10th of the month following any expenditures. These current contracts will end on September 30th, 2026. However, if you get to that period of time and we're not able to fully implement the program and there are funds left over, you can request a no-cost extension to continue the program into the following year. One thing I will note regarding funds for both this year and next year is that invoices cannot cross the fiscal year, which ends on September 30th. Meaning that if you have any expenses for September of 2025, you cannot include those with your October expenses and November expenses, etc. So if you end up getting expenses for September 2025, you'll need to invoice us for those in October. And then your second invoice can have expenses for October or even months beyond that. We just need to make sure that all the September or invoices are on their own same form. I guess that's it for now. I would say thank you for your time. Hope we have addressed most of your questions, but we will open it up for Q&A right now. And if you think of something after this webinar ends, please send us an email or call us with your questions. Congratulations on receiving your Safe Routes to School Award, and we wish you the best as you implement and grow your programs, and we look forward to helping you succeed.